This episode contains disturbing and explicit sexual conversations by church leaders. Listener discretion is advised.
In 1992, Gary and Marilyn Hargrave, leaders of the Living Word Fellowship, held a special meeting in the Los Angeles Church Sanctuary.
For the next 4 hours, Gary and Marilyn speak explicitly about sexual promiscuity, masturbation, Gary's flowing hormones, young children's obsessions with sex, Gary and Marilyn's investigation into the mysteries of intercourse, and directives on unmarried congregant sex lives.
For the first time, we will bring to light this previously restricted videotape titled Gary and Marilyn Talk to the Singles.
Or as we like to call it, Gary and Marilyn Make a Sex Tape.
Ew.
Welcome to the whatever podcast this is.
Are we going to change the title or are we good with?
We love Oops, I'm in a Cult.
What is this podcast about though, Charity?
John Robert Stevens.
The Living Word.
The Walk.
It's cults. It's cons.
And corn.
Sex to me is one of the greatest mysteries that there is in the universe.
Gary and I have pursued the mystery of it.
You want to f***? I know that because my hormones are still very flowing. Sex!
You're showing us how to have an atmosphere of trust and of faith and of commitment.
I go to church, dressed up in costume and hang off the guy's fan. Some vacuum-driven dildo set. My brain tells me to go screw every woman I see.
Say, I'm really a good slut.
You're way out of control, both of you.
God, if I went and did everything that I am, it'd scare me. I feel like there is a tremendous amount of sexuality in young children.
It already starts by 5. There's a sex drive.
I mean, just be normal. Be a normal person.
You're going to watch as two former cult members try to de-dumbify themselves by doing a podcast about the cult that they were involved in their entire life.
Thought it was a church, turned out it was a cult. Oh, there's a good tagline.
That's what it is. That's it.
Oops, I'm in a cult. So we're just kicking this off with this high quality intro that was...
Yes, we'll work this. I think we'll work this intro into the intro-y intro. But I do want to... So I don't know if we need this.
Ooh, build it up. Teal dubs. What cinematographic genius was this?
That's CGI cutting edge right there. Okay, so this videotape starts with a warning.
The following Living Word Reference Library videotape contains strong language and is to be viewed only with Shepherd approval.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
And it's titled Gary and Marilyn Talk with the Singles, Sunday, December 20, 1992, Church of the Living Word in Sepulveda, California, since renamed North Hills, California.
It's fancier now.
Yeah, and we're just gonna...
All right, let's talk about what we're going to do here tonight.
Let's talk about what we're going to do here
First,
tonight.
can I set the scene as far as
Yes.
Gary's outfit? Because it's really fun.
Yeah, it is. It's a really good
For
point.
those that are listening only on audio, so Gary has these like sweet stonewashed jeans and some black leather alligator cowboy boots, and he pretty much has a man spread going the whole time. Sometimes it's the man spread with like the one, I'm so cool, like one leg over.
I'm gonna try. I mean, I've got a pretty decent man spread right now, but like I think it gets spreadier throughout the whole thing. Gary in the 90s was peak Gary at various times.
Big gold chain, fancy mustache.
Yeah, I don't know if he's wearing too much of the chains and stuff.
I saw it.
He's got that?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess he's always got that. But he's got his mustache and his little, what is this thing called?
Flavor saver.
Just the tiny little goatee thing right underneath the flavor saver. Is that
I
what
don't
it
know
is?
the technical term, but
whatever it is, where all the rest is clean shaven, but then it's just the little business down in
soul
there.
patch.
Anyways, well, this is just a very 90s video. A lot about it is very 90s. You'll hear things that are just like 90s-esque throughout the whole thing. He talks about videotapes at bars for dating and stuff like that. But here's the whole scene. That's just Gary. He is like... He's also sitting on stage like cool teacher. I'm going to get real with you.
Yeah,
style.
Not behind a pulpit. Just
this is like the pastor, the top button a little bit unbuttoned, and like the striped shirts. And like you should also watch his sleeves. Like if you're watching this, his sleeves are elbow rolled up. They get more rolled up as time goes on. They're like way up, like almost
just,
tank top.
Like really feeling himself.
He's really feeling
himself. And then you have in the background all these shepherds. There's one woman back there
Yes.
Poor woman. But the rest of them are, equally man-spread.
Yes. And there's so like, that's part of the thing too, is like when we watch this thing and, no, we're not going to like go out of our way to point it out, but they like, they're also goofy, especially the dude over Gary's left shoulder. So right side of the screen. We will kind of acknowledge it if we see it, but like that
name rhymes with Don Drill.
Yes, or Bon.
We're taking a cue from snapping out of our friends at Snapping Out of It.
Yeah, we learned a thing or
two.
He's back there, and he is like easily the most immature out of everybody.
Yeah, they're just like making little dumb jokes with each other, like snickering behind,
whispering in each other's ears, laughing every time Gary says masturbation or stuff like that. The whole thing is just an exercise in immaturity.
It's cringy.
It's very cringy, and you never really see the audience except for the very end. They all stand up for standing ovation for.
They do a little bit of Q&A.
A little bit of Q&A, so a few people come up, but what we find out through context clues is that it's high school kids through people in their 40s.
Yeah, it's just singles.
Anybody not in a serious relationship or married.
But it included, and they recorded this there and then distributed. It was played in the churches. I was living in Shiloh, growing up in Shiloh, and I think I was like 14 at the time. So
you actually saw this when you were supposed to see it.
I did indeed, yes.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things we want to talk about, but just to acknowledge kind of what Charity was saying, what we saw earlier is like this is a restricted tape, meaning that you needed a shepherd's approval in order to watch it. They didn't just allow, like most of these tapes were like, you go buy it at the tape library store or check it out or whatever. And this one, you needed approval to do that.
After they played it.
Yes.
For the first time.
That's right. And if we didn't put this in at the very beginning with text or like a pre-recorded thing, I'm just reminding you again, this is giant trigger warning for former members of the Living Word. Sorry about all this rambling ahead of time, but no joke. Charity saw this when she was
14-ish.
14. I never saw it directly, but when I first went through this, again, 4-hour tape of nonstop Gary talking, I can't say I don't know how else to say it. It fucked with me.
Yeah.
It screwed with me. It effed with me. It was, it wasn't just ew. It was I realized, and I will mention where this is, because we have it as one of the selects, but it's a good example, I guess. I can't really relate you're going to experience if you're a former member and you grew up born and raised in this thing. If you were of this age-ish when this went through, you're going to experience, I guess, what I experienced more or less. It'll be a little easier because Charity and I will help it go down. Mm-hmm. And it's only, we're not playing all 4 hours, obviously. But it screwed with me. It was hard enough already, relationships and sex and things like that. But then to watch this and hear Gary say stuff that informed me when I was younger.
That it had, even though you're a bit younger than me.
I thought these were my beliefs.
Right.
Or my memories, or at least I didn't watch the tape, like I said, but one of these things in here, one of the teachers, just somebody who was a little bit older than me in the church, who happened to be one of the teachers, said this stuff as if it was her experience,
right? As
if it was a fact that she experienced and something that I was learning from her. She was just echoing what Gary said.
So these ideas were, even though you were a little bit too young, you're just a little bit younger than me. You missed out on hearing this in this specific message I did, but the ideas were all recirculated, still embedded. And so that was interesting really interesting to hear from you that you didn't even know where those ideas came from, but that they were a part of your makeup.
Yeah. And I just would like to add being able to put that together and be able to say that as relatively coherently that I just did was not my first experience when I first watched this recently, going through it. The experience was why does everything hurt? You know, like it was just gross and weird and confusing. There's like the way that he talks about stuff is like, I almost believe it, but then I realize like what he's saying is like really shitty. And some of this stuff too is kind of like general Christian purity culture stuff, which we don't do too much. We don't really like play that much of, but you'll see that in here as well.
But it is a lot of very strange messaging, and it's like it informed all of the young people's experience or ideas around sex and dating and all of that stuff. And you'll see it's absolutely nuts, like some of this shit that he says.
And we actually tried to record this episode last year.
Yeah.
And we made it like 20 minutes in and Charity cried. We had to stop.
And even picking out these selects of audio from the 4 hours, it's like we had to take it in like hour increments.
Yes, very like little bit at a time, as much as we can handle, and like just more. Just it's all kind of like doing this is all kind of like this. Everything. Anytime we go back to Gary talking about whatever, or anytime we do John, it's all a little bit of this like shitty PTSD adjacent, experience. But this one was like, I don't know. It just
really weird. It's creepy. You'll see.
It's creepy and gross and stuff. So
we should, let's
get actually into do this. Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot of selects here. We're going to play them. We'll pause. We might talk over him a little bit if it gets a little to tie things together. But like just, it's less than an hour of selects that we have to play.
Yeah.
And let's get going. This is just kind of a kickoff. I don't actually have a note on this one, so we're just going to see what happens.
I know that we always speak to our audience, and this tonight is not going to be a specific enough group of people to really specifically do a lot of things that we would like to do. So that's one thing I want to recognize, so we'll make it as effective as we possibly can. The other thing is
I'd love to know like the specific. What would he say if like you'll see everything that he says? So what would he say in a specific group?
Oh my God, that's scary to think about.
Like for there to be a real freedom here tonight to talk about things. Again, I know that we have high schoolers and on up. There, to me, there's nothing that you guys in high school shouldn't be able to hear at this age. So, however frankly we speak, I think that I would rather be free to speak frankly and use whatever terminology is necessary to cover the subject, because I generally do that anyway, So I don't know what it has to do with this subject. I swear all the time. It's good for you to understand that you don't have to be weird. I mean, to me, to be in the body does not mean to be weird. And I think seriously, people interpret that somehow. And that's a lot of what I'd like to see dealt with tonight is, you can be a normal person and be in this church.
Actually.
You can walk with God and not be from Mars, And I think that misunderstandings and misinterpretations of things causes you to relate to people in a way where you're being strange.
Okay, so this is the first of like many times that he talks about how people in the church are weird.
Yeah.
And it, it's frustrating. I don't think you need us to like break that down too much. Why it's frustrating because
the culture he created made it weird.
Yeah, like first off, it's rude as fuck.
Yeah.
To like say like all of you guys are weird and I'm normal, which is what he continues on doing. But it's also like, you'll see more of it as he talks about it. It's like he's the leader, like you said, like who's in charge of this culture, who's in charge of this community. What we all get together every single week and like write down like what we're supposed to do that Gary tells us to do, and then we do that, and then Gary comes back and like, you guys are weird.
Yeah, I don't know why you're so weird.
Yeah, why are you so weird? Like,
the other thing that I forgot to mention is like there was this unspoken rule in the church ever since I could remember up until I was 14 that singles were not allowed to date.
Oh,
and that's how this whole thing came about. And it was very strange because Gary and Marilyn were like, we don't know who gave that directive. We didn't do that. And it was like the whole church was like a lot of these older singles, like in their 30s and 40s, they just didn't date like normal people because that's what everyone was told.
Yeah.
And yet Gary's up here, the leader of the church, being like, I don't know how you guys got that idea. So that's what instigated this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just wanted to point out for non-former member listeners that when he's talking about the body, it's capital T, capital B. They referred to the Living Word Fellowship as the body, referring to the body of Christ, but it was specifically for members.
Yeah, that was a thing. And was that in the deposition episode? Or we cut that part because
I don't remember.
I think we cut it, but that was one of the like clarification questions in the deposition was like, okay, when you say the body, do you mean this? And Gary's like, no. That means the body of Christ. It's a thing that's used outside of the thing, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, yeah, but okay, that thing. Anyways, we're not going to go into it, but it's just like, it's like squeezing it out of him, like just admit.
And here he says it like 500 times. It's the body is just us.
Yeah, the body is the living word, broadly the living word, local churches and beyond, et cetera. And then one more thing that we forgot to mention up top. I know, so we're getting into this. I just want to tease like what's all the way at the end because we're just saving that for the best for last. So when you decide after 15 or 20 minutes of listening to Gary talk about this stuff that it's too much for you, remember to come back,
fast forward,
or just skip right to the end and watch that stuff, because we will actually read one more chunk of deposition that was technically excluded and removed, like in the court filings. It was filed separately, which we'll get into later about why, to some degree, what we think, or I don't know, whatever. But it's really interesting because it's centered a little bit about what he says here about kids and like sex. Toddlers.
It's like deeply disturbing.
Yeah, it's very disturbing, and it follows something that we think is even more, maybe not more disturbing, but very disturbing. So it's like these very weird freaking ideas come later. A lot of the stuff up front is relationship based and like how you should relate to people and like dating and like.
But it gets into very explicit like sexual stuff.
Exactly. Like,
which, oh, by the way,
vacuum-driven dildo.
Good Lord. This is stuff that like the parents should have been, the sex talk should come from your parents, not your pastor.
Yes.
And certainly not like this, but yeah, stay tuned because you'll see.
But the problems you're having as singles, to me, I feel like is because you don't really know how to go out and just create relationships on all levels. Relationships on all levels.
That's kind of what Charity was referring to, that there was that issue at the time where like nobody was dating. And Gary's like, you don't even know how to make regular relationships. And it's like, there's a lot of truth to this stuff. And it's like, I think this will help a lot of people who said like when they left, they were like, I didn't know how to function in the world. And like, this is definitely one of those things, because relationships were like artificial and forced and weird and shitty a lot of times in the church, unless it was like your trauma bond person that you connected with or whatever, and you like survived.
It's a testament to how culty it was, that people didn't know how to relate like normal outsiders.
Yes, exactly.
What's next?
Okay, so this is relationships and spiritual sex.
I mean, to me, what we're talking about here, this idea in this thing of relationships, this to me is like spiritual sex. It's like a spiritual sexual relationship. And I think that there are certain things that you're going to find that you never want to open up until you are married. Because in a sense, if you do that, you're kind of a spiritual virgin. Because in all honesty, see, when you do this, when you walk in this thing we're talking about of relationships, you are creating a bond and a connection with a person that is as deep and as real as what sex does in melting two spirits. I think between the act of sexual intercourse and the act of opening your heart to somebody in honesty, in all truth and honesty to the absolute depth, I think it's those two acts that really blend two people together until they're one person.
Okay. I think that's something that like you hear that it's not like on the surface, I think something that's like, oh, it's totally crazy or whatever. But he's setting this up. This is like the first time he's starting to talk about actual sex. But he's talking about like that relating, like go to a Save the Whales, all that stuff he was saying before about like just making a regular relationship with people is like, if you open up too much, it's like creating a bond that's as like, strong as sex.
Yeah.
And like on a spiritual level, like you can end up doing that. And so you have to be really careful. He goes on a lot about that, about like how you have to be careful about what you open up to people, how much you open up to people. You should hold certain things for your marriage partner, and because otherwise you will create a bond. And bonds, for those that, you know, are not a part, I mean, they are what they sound like, but we had a lot of conversations about spiritual bonds and breaking bonds and how you end up creating bonds, and you shouldn't have bonds. And all of that kind of stuff. It was part of the spiritual doctrine and teaching that Gary taught. And so this was, a bond is something that like you would have that connection with somebody and then you would be stuck with them. And he goes on to talk about that more, about how emotionally, spiritually, physically, yeah. So this is the one that I'll talk about a little bit afterwards. I'll hear it.
But it's important for you to have that feel, because when you talk about a relationship, to me, it's like your life is change. You know, it's small change. Like your life is, say your life is $100. When you walk along and give away $1, you just gave that dollar away. And you only have $99 of yourself left to give away. And so whatever you hand out, you should be sure you're handing it out to the right people, because once you hand out that dollar, there's no guarantee they're going to give it back if something happens in that relationship, and you may be without that dollar. You know, again, talking about the sexual relationship, sex is that way. You can only give your virginity away one time. And that's just the facts. And if all of a sudden you come 10 years down the road into a relationship where you wish you could give your virginity to this person, you don't have it to give anymore. And there is no way you can recoup what you gave. And more than you realize, that's the way your spirit is. There's when you give something out of your spirit, bank on never giving it back. In other words, count it that important. Because if you can't recover it, you don't have it to give anymore.
I think. What do you think of that, Charity?
Well, that's the thing I remember the most, because this was after this message came. Then, like in the Young Adult Summer Program, they kept repeating that thing over and over again about the dollar. You've only got $1, and if you go have sex with someone, or even if you sometimes some of the shepherds were like, even if you kiss someone, you create a bond. And I just feel sorry for you, because now you have to break that bond with that person. And it was that fear-based stuff of, if you're going to give all your whole dollar away and then you'll meet the love of your life, and oh my God, you don't have anything to give them. It's just like such hyperbole. And then the thing too about this, even spiritually, so even if it's not sexual, that you run the risk of like giving to, so he's telling people to be normal, but then putting all this fear-based stuff like, oh my God, am I saying too much? Am I sharing too much? Am I now bonded to this person?
Yeah. That's the message from it, is like, I think is really dumb that like you could talk to somebody and open up about something, have an experience with them, and then you are less.
Yeah, like you've given it all away.
You've given it away, and so now you're less because of that.
Yeah,
I actually think it's the opposite.
Right.
You're more because of that. Mm-hmm. You've created a connection. And if then you don't have a relationship with that person later, that doesn't detract from you as a person. And that's what he's saying. And then he says, obviously, the sexual thing where it's like, every time you have sex, essentially you're like giving $1 of yourself out. And then like by the time, you meet the person, you're just all spent and like useless, which is, again, that's like kind of along the same lines as like general purity culture stuff, I think. But it's just so specific about how like you're depleted as a person as you go on through life, which is total bullshit, in my opinion. And, but that's the one that I remember hearing. Like when I heard this, when I was first watching the tape, I was like,
oh, that's where that came from.
That's where that came from.
Yeah.
And it's that just represents what I'm realizing is like all of these ideas were just like any older person, anybody talking to me about this kind of stuff, it's like, oh, duh, it came from Gary being a fucking dumbass and thinking that he knows everything about sex. And like would joke about like, this is Mr. fucking robot man trying to tell you what it means to be in a relationship and how to have a good relationship, you know?
Yeah.
And as we heard in the last episode, he bailed on his wife and kid. Right. And that also is important later in this. But like, what is this dude talking about?
Yeah, he sounds like as it goes on, he sounds like he's a fucking expert in all of these areas.
Yeah.
He talks like he's the expert and authority. He does no education on any of it.
That's right.
What's next?
Okay. All right. So are we nailing this down? Do you want to go to this other thing over here? Yeah. You've heard enough about your shepherd. You want to get into your sex life, right?
Hilarious.
Missed his calling as a stand-up comic. I always say it.
I heard the girls down here go, "What sex life?"
So it's high school girl sitting in front of him that he makes eyes at a few times. Okay, this is more of the like, you guys are all weird.
And so there's that part of it. I think that there is also a way in which you guys are being a little bit weird and just not handling things right because of a thinking, wherever you've gotten it from, whether you think it's come from the Word or come from this or that or the other thing. I think that there's ways in which you guys could feel free to be far more normal than what I think you're being. Now,
he's like properly upset that people are
one of the areas
not
I think
normal.
that's really a hang-up in that is just the fact that you're in the body, see, and you have a walk with God. And I think that I think that scares the hell out of you when you go to relate to people. And consequently, I think that there's a tendency, whether it's on the school level of kids or whatever, I think that you hide what you are. And so when you relate to people, I think you come across weird to people. You know what I'm saying? Have you ever talked to somebody that just was kind of like, you walk away scratching your head going, where in the hell are they coming from?
Okay, this is very true. It's very true that people in the church came across as weird to people outside. And it's because we couldn't talk about being a part of the church because it was weird.
Yeah, we knew that on some level.
Yeah, we knew it on some level. Like, or you'd try it. You'd like kind of mention like just something stupid like, oh, I'm going to like a work day at the church or whatever.
Every weekend.
And like you just give them a little bit of details or like, I got to like check in with my shepherd, that kind of stuff. Just mention like one thing. He's like, you should open up about your life and like be who you are, but don't be weird. It's like, well, who we are
How
is weird.
do I not be weird when this is weird?
Yeah, exactly.
Just let it come up in normal conversation, for God's sake. Don't sit there for 9 months when they're asking you to get engaged and say, well, there's something I've got to tell you. And the guy's going, wait, you're pregnant or what? I mean, it's like this disaster thing just happened in the relationship. There's something I've got to tell you. I go to church.
Okay, it wasn't a church. It was a cult.
Exactly. That's why, like, any of you listening out there that go to church would probably not have that same feeling because you go to a normal church. Like,
yeah.
If you feel like you got to break it to your person in that way, it's because it's not a normal church.
That's right. That's right.
That's how I felt.
And I actually agree with Gary. Like if you're in a weird fucking church and you're having a hard time telling a person that's not a part of it that you're a part of this, like, it's a little weird or whatever, tell them everything.
Yes.
Tell them everything that you do. Don't worry about them running away. They might run away. That's fine. But like, you might get the opportunity to be like, oh,
oops,
shit.
I'm in a cult.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, here's Gary's not last. He unfortunately not last, but more advice.
And then you wonder why people think you're strange. and I'm not, to me, you don't have to witness to everybody in the world. I mean, just be normal. Be a normal person.
He hates us all. He hated us all.
He hated everybody in the church. He created, and that actually, I think that really fits a narcissist. I think, or maybe I'm not obviously, but like, I think there's.
Oh, you don't have a degree in psychology like Gary here?
Yeah. I'm not as learned as Gary, but like my guess is that there's a little bit of that where it's like I want everybody to do everything that I say all the time. I want everybody to love me. I want to sit here like cool teacher in my like acid wash jeans and like keep rolling my sleeves up until there's no more sleeves. But like I want to do all of that stuff. I want you all laughing at my jokes. I want to be awesome. I want to wink at the high school girls down there. I want all of this stuff. But then when you all obsess over everything that I say and you actually follow the words that I bring,
you're a weirdo.
You're a weirdo and stop being so fucking weird.
Yeah. And now I'm going to tell you like, yeah, exactly. Why can't you be normal?
Yes, exactly. Okay. How many times are we doing the weird? Yeah, this is more weird. It's just weird. And then Gary and Marilyn trying to escape the weird is the next few clips. So this one's like a specific type of weird.
You're weird, and we hate you, so we try to avoid you because you're weird.
Yeah, so let's keep listening to this because the details on like how is it again, he hates everybody and you can see it.
You know, I mean, to me, if you had AIDS or something, you should do that. Sit down. I've got AIDS. I just want you to know. Because now we're talking something seriously that could ruin the relationship. But to me, that's the way the body is to you. It's like AIDS. My God, I've got AIDS. You know, I'm walking with the Lord.
The body is being a part of the living word is like having AIDS.
Touch me and you'll die.
It's like touch me and you'll die. Like I don't know. I think there's some people out there that like have that are former members that listen who have spouses who are not members who they kind of like. Brought in or whatever. Play this for them. Yeah. Ask them if they're like, oh shit, that's kind of like what I, like tell us.
I have heard that, a friend she married someone that wasn't in the church and he came around, to indulge her and support her and whatever. But he's like, I remember him saying, I knew all along it was a cult. Like that was obvious immediately.
Yes. And I wonder too, because I think in my experience, there's a little bit of that, like the person who is not a part of it, and you get in a relationship with them, they really like you and they're into who you are. And then you bring them to church and they're like, you're fucking weird. Like you're weird when you're here, or the people are weird that are here. And you see that, like, that's my recollection of it is like, you bring this person in, they walk through the door, they're like a normal person, not a part of it. And immediately everything changes and you see the horror on their face and you're like, what?
Oof. Yeah.
Oof.
We're around people outside the body all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, as much as possible. Because they're so normal. You know what I mean? You can sit down and have a conversation with somebody in the world, and they're not weird. See, people tend to get weird when they get in the body. Don't be weird.
Again, this is the culture that he created, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really comfortable and fun when you're in your cult. Like all the audience there, everybody's like laughing at themselves and having a great time recognizing that like, oh, maybe we are a little weird or whatever. At least that's the way it sounds. I'm sure there were a lot of people that were like, wait, I'm weird. He's talking about when they're out in the world, it's just like, it's so comfortable.
This distinction between the two.
But then Gary's talking about, he's like, he's joking, but like, I think he's serious.
He's totally serious.
He's totally serious. Like we try as much as possible. He talks about going out to bars, getting on airplanes, like spending time away. The next thing is he gives us an example of a bar that he goes to and like, which he talks a lot about drinking in bars, which is, not surprising. That's just one of the things. I like to speculate that he's got water, he's got vodka in that thing. This is water, I promise.
It's in the AM.
Yeah. But anyways, let's hear the rest of this.
Because we go to places like, we'll go to a bar to get away from everything. And we generally try to pick some place where you're not going to be because we want to get away, see? And so you find some nice bar where nobody in the body is going to go to. Yeah, there's a few left.
Gary is such the jokester. Yeah, so he's like trying to find the bars where like Nobody in the body is, so you can just get a freaking break from everyone.
Yeah.
What was that thing that we read in the deposition last time where it's like, I go to church, I bring the sermon, and I go home.
And it was like, that tracks.
That
So
tracks.
he got out of there as fast as possible and talked to as few people as possible.
And I go to the bar that,
that none of you dumb asses are at. None of you weirdos.
Because I think a lot of the problem that we have now is people who are in their late 20s, early 30s that were kind of raised in the walk that never learned how to do this. And so there's some of the older ones here that in a sense are like cripples, emotional cripples.
Again, that's like, he's because he spends so much time away from everybody, he notices, maybe that people are that way, but like you set it up that way.
Yeah.
The whole first hour of this is him talking about designated relationships, by the way, which we've covered so many times that we didn't even pretend to include that in here. But he set up designated relationships. Again, the system of control that was like you had to check in on every little ding-dongy thing that you were going to do. Of course, that would make you an emotional cripple.
Yeah.
It's like, anyways, it's just so much of this, like he's lecturing in this way that's like, and then I just love it because all the like shepherds in the back are probably just like, oh shit, we've been like telling people to do all this stuff this whole time, not talk to each other and not do all these things. And Gary's up here just like, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Be normal. And this is like this ideology carried on for years and years and years. Cause I remember like dating somebody in the church in the early 2000s, I guess it would have been like,
yeah.
And being told by my shepherds that like we should date like so-and-so dated, and this couple that got married did not even kiss before they got married, did not even hold hands, because that's how you really properly get to know somebody. You don't even touch each other. You don't even, and it was just like, wait, what? Not even hold hands, not even kiss. Like she was telling me that's how me and this person should be dating. And I was like, oops. I wasn't. I was like that. I remember at the time just thinking, that's nuts. You marry somebody that you haven't even held hands with? That's fucking nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, that's like one of the things that he's addressing here. He's like trying to say that like, there should be dating and there should be whatever. But again, it's still that like lockdown dating.
Yes, exactly.
It's not just the purity, like don't do certain things, whatever. It's the like, you still have to, especially what happens after this is the more control comes in of the like, you need to check in on every little thing. Is this the right person for you? How long should you date? Should you get married? You want to break up? No, you actually should get married, et cetera, et cetera. So like, it's not making things better, Gary.
And if you've never dated, I mean, we've got people in their 30s that have never really dated a man or a woman.
Isn't that crazy? That sounds right. And then marriage checkouts he talks about, which is the older style. And they still did it, but then it got more, different. But like you'll hear this marriage checkout.
People used to come up to John and say, well, here we are, we want a marriage checkout. Well, they don't even know each other.
That's John Stevens, the founder of the church. So the guy that was in charge before Gary used to expect people to like just come up to him and be like, we want a marriage checkout. And that would just be like, John would say yes or no, you can get married.
And also he would sometimes put people together that didn't know each other and say, you two should get married. And that's what he's...
Yeah, that's what he's acknowledging.
They saw each other across the church one time. He went and grabbed her, she went and grabbed him. They said, well, let's go get a word. And so they'd come up and present this to John and say, give us a word about our relationship. Well, that's not the way to approach it. I think that you should get spiritual input, but I think it should be confirmation.
Confirmation is what ends up being the problem.
I think there should be a confirmation factor in there, because you've done enough of your homework to say, I think this is what I want. Now what I'm doing, I've checked it out to the best of my ability. Now I'm saying, is this the one?
Yeah. So it's still the same thing. It's just now he's saying, oh, you should date before you do it. So it's like the same, it's the same deal, I think, of like a marriage checkout. It's just before people were told that they should not touch each other until they're married. And here he's like, you can touch each other a little bit, but then go talk to the shepherds if you can touch each other a lot,
I don't know. No, of course they would say no. Like,
yeah, and that's what like you can even see in like Shalom's letters. She does that long back and forth with the shepherds, and they're like, you guys can hang out in groups, but no touching. And that was very typical. So it's just like, he's not really changing anything. He's just trying to be like the cool 90s cult leader, you know, where it's like, you like still want to control everything that you do, but like, you know, we can touch now.
But we're cool.
And now we're getting into the mysteries.
Sex to me is one of the greatest mysteries that there is in the universe. And I would say that, you know, it's one of the things that Marilyn and I really have wanted to be able to unravel as a mystery, because there's a definite mystery to sex, and it becomes a very psychic, very spiritual thing in there. Most of you don't care about that. You just want to get your rocks off. So there's no sense in spending a lot of time with that side of it.
They do, spoiler alert, spend some time with that side of it.
Yep.
But that'll be in a second. I think the mystery sex, psychic, spiritual, like these kind of things, that belief is like, you could definitely find it other places. It's like it's a thing, but it's just interesting to hear the way they're going to talk about it.
I was curious about that though, because I don't like, where else do they say, as he's going to go into about like, oh, the psychic bonds and all this stuff. I don't.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Would love to know if that is out there somewhere, because.
Yeah, I think that the way he talks about it, the psychic bonds and the deepness of it, they talk about how it's like a special level of prayer that you can get to, which we'll hear about. Like if you have sex, it's like
intercession.
It's a better way of reaching God. But the thing, I think, in like really broad, like I think when he's saying when you have sex, it's like a higher level of existence or something like that. I'm holding space for, there's some weird stuff out there. So I'm just like, I think there's like, I don't know enough about out there, but I think I would believe that, you know, sex is an emotional experience. It can be like this really amazing. And so maybe that's kind of what he's talking about. I just think he's making a bigger deal out of it than it needs to be.
He's again lacing it with the fear, because you'll see like in the next clips, it's like.
Exactly. That's right. There's an interesting thing coming up about that you should be worried about. Mm-hmm. But like, anyways, let's just keep listening to what Gary has to say instead of hearing me try and give my crazy ideas.
When your hormones are flowing, it's a hard thing not to think about. I know that because my hormones are still very flowing.
Thanks for sharing, Gary.
I just want to acknowledge the way when he says that, he's like staring straight into the high school kids.
He is. My hormones are still flowing.
My hormones are still flowing, baby.
Wink, wink.
You know, but it's a very real part of your life. The only thing I can tell you is it's also, relatively speaking, a very small part of your life. And yet it's a very intimate part of your life. And like I said before, your virginity is something that you can only give away one time. You can only give that to one person. And you can give that to somebody you don't know in the backseat of a car. You can give that to somebody that you think you're really in love with. You can give it to somebody because they're willing to, give you what you want. There's a lot of reasons that you can get rid of your virginity, but at some point, trust me, it will have a value to it that now is overwhelmed. See, virginity, it's like in some ways, it's like trying to convince you that a penny has value. Because the thing that has value now is you want sex! You know what I'm saying?
His hormones are flowing.
Yeah, it's like. But that's true. See, it's hard. It's just what you want to fuck is what you want to do, and so really, virginity is in the way of that, isn't it?
Let's pause it there really quick. He does more of this. We're gonna play in a second. I just like, he's just cool pastor man. He's cool.
Cool pastor man.
Yeah, I would I would appreciate it if he actually like turned his chair around backwards, and like leaned on the back, like did that thing, just went all the way in with it, because it's just so like, you want to fuck in Virginia. I get it, guys.
It's just wild that this is like,
Yes.
at church. This podcast is brought to you by us, your friendly neighborhood Cultbusters.
Oops, I'm in an advertisement. If you'd like to support our efforts and access exclusive bonus content,
Like behind the scenes conversations,
let's put this behind us.
access to our research and more.
Head over to Supercast, where you can subscribe monthly or yearly.
It's exclusive, it's personal, it's behind the scenes.
All about the Living Word cult.
Went to the records department trying to get filings for John Robert Stevens' divorce.
This is an unskippable advertisement.
Thanks and enjoy the rest of the episode.
You want to screw. You want to fuck. You want to have sex. You want to experience this because you're driven to experience it. There's a drive there behind it, and it's very difficult to say, oh no, this has value over here. This virginity thing this is the value, trust me. When it's your enemy.
Yeah. Anyways.
It
Fun
doesn't
stuff.
ever go into saying like why it has value.
Well, yeah, no, he doesn't. Other than I think the bonds.
Yeah, which I guess we're going to get into.
And it is one thing, it's fun as hell. If it's right, it's really fun. If it's wrong, it's deadly.
Okay. Just remember that, because as we get into here, he's talking about like, if it's wrong, it's deadly. And so what does he mean by wrong?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the next clip. No, we finally get to hear from Marilyn in the next clip.
Oh, this is great. Word salad.
Yes. It ends with a nice little punch. So we're excited about
Bear
the
with
punch.
her nonsense.
Yeah.
Oh, God, she never makes sense.
But you know what I'm saying? What I want everybody to do is to be free, to be yourself, to know what you want, and go after it. And if you honestly really do want to go out and have a life of free sex, we're not telling you you can't. Just know what you're doing. Be honest about it. At least dress for the occasion, including everything, for God's sake. Yes. And know the consequences, and not even hide it from your shepherd. For God's sake, don't hide it from yourself, because, you're going to be playing a foreign game. You'll drive yourself crazy. You'll be pretending you're not doing what you're doing. And then you'll feel guilty the next day. At least go do it with your shoulders back and say, I'm really a good slut.
It's such mixed messaging, because that was just like...
Yeah, what happened to Girls Turn Off?
Yeah, what happened to Girls Turn It Off?
Mm-hmm. She should have done a new tape.
Girls Turn It On. But only when we say you can.
No,
but tell your shepherd.
I think the new tape would have been, I'm really a good slut. I think would have been a lot better.
But notice she also said, but like, tell your shepherd. That's so gross.
Yeah,
like,
that wouldn't have happened.
No. If you would get chastised, you would get taken to the cleaners about it. Like,
yeah, that's right.
Come on.
Yeah, it's very mixed messaging, very confusing. Because just a few years before, she did the Girls Turn It Off stuff, which is that like, I'm anti-woman. I don't like that women like project and all that stuff.
Well, and then like in practice too, like our interview with Titus, like he got kicked out of the church.
That's right.
Essentially for like having sex. That was part of it.
Yeah, that's right.
So you're going to go to your shepherd and be like, and think there's not going to be any heavy-handed consequence.
Yeah, and you're going to be accepted still and like all that. Yeah, no. So she goes on here to address that Girls Turn It Off situation.
The single women, what'll happen is, what I've hated in the body is these women have, girls turn it off. You've turned it off to the point where you're almost dead, you turn life off. All you're to do is just stop the projection so you don't have all the guys wanting to take you to bed all the time. Or flirting with you, or giving you bad advances or something. You think, oh, what am I, why are these guys, and a lot of women love that, and so they do that. But there can be something you just put in a deep freeze, like John said. Don't project the sexual side of it, but still be very feminine, very free, and just put it in the back of your head that this far I go and no further. So I am not out here raping men mentally.
It's so severe. It's just, and also like so confusing.
Yeah, what did she mean by all that?
Who the fuck knows? It's like, put it in a deep freeze. Don't do your turn to so far off, you're dead. But don't flirt, don't project. And if someone a man makes advances, it's because of something you did. Again, we've revisited that a bunch of times on this podcast. It is so confusing, especially imagine like as a 14-year-old girl, it's like, okay, wait. And then you just become so, I don't know what any of this means. I don't know what if I'm doing this wrong or right. And then you just shut down because you have no idea what you're supposed to be doing.
That's right. Yeah, it's really confusing. I think I would have just heard the go be a good slut and been like, okay.
Cool. That's what I should have done, really, like, honestly.
That easy. It's that easy. Marilyn said it. She's the lamp of Israel. This is one of my favorite bits. It's, Gary's out here getting like,
oh, Gary's getting all the laughs.
Laugh after laugh. He's like better stand-up comedian than some of the professional stand-up comedians that were in the church.
Rhymes with Schmott McPonald.
Pot.
Schmick.
McDougal.
We don't do as well as Charlie and Mike on this.
Scott McDonald. Here we go.
It's a hell of a world, and you're a target. I don't care. You don't even have to be somebody's on the 10 list of his qualifications. You just have to be female and willing, or as a man, you just have to be willing, and you're stuck if you do.
That's hard to find too. A man that's willing to have sex. I mean, that would take months, probably.
Well, I would add, the men, the way they get trapped is marriage through sex.
She's just crickets. She's waiting for the laugh.
Really
It's so quiet after she makes that joke. Like you see her like do that little tilt, like marriage, and the studio audience is just gone. Somebody forgot to hit the laugh track button. Oh, yeah. It's so good. We're going to watch it again because I just love how embarrassing it is. Just watch her die inside and try and recover from it afterwards. It's just so good.
The men, the way they get trapped is marriage through sex. They'll have somebody really willing, and then they'll be, the next thing you know, there's a woman, a man wants sex, a woman wants marriage.
Exactly.
A man wants sex, a woman wants marriage.
Yeah, and then Gary's got to come in and save the day and like be like, oh shit, she's drowning out here. It's just, you can just see it on her face. It's just like she expected everybody to laugh and then they didn't. And she's a man wants, just so good. Even just the face she's making now. Oh, I'm sorry. I just love that. Okay. Gary goes on like a really long thing about homosexuality. That he talks about it a little bit here, and then later he talks about it, and we've kind of like compiled it into all the homosexuality stuff. It's, you can expect, what it is, but he has his like ideas, and so we're going to play some of that stuff. And part of the reason that we're gonna do this, and why it might be a little broader than some of the other things, is just because I had that experience the first time that I watched this thing through, was just like, oh my God, this is where I'm getting these like condemning ideas. Like it's possible that this is where some of that stuff originated, or the weird thoughts of like, oh, is this mine? And it's like easy now to be like, oh, that was their idea.
Yeah.
And I can like separate it, as we've done with like a lot of the teachings of the living word. It's like, it's
peeling
kind of
the layers on like,
yeah, it's part of who you are, and you don't realize that maybe it came from some dum-dums like this. So for the homosexuality thing that they're talking about here, we wanted to have it so that, Gary even mentions in here, he's like, I've counseled with gay men who are in the church, and et cetera, et cetera. We're just wanting to have it as an opportunity to like hear his bad ideas, and like maybe that's where you're going to be like, oh shit.
Yeah, like if
You
there was
know?
a teenager or a young person
Right.
in there that was like felt like they might be gay, and then here's this stuff, and then like this instant feelings of like I'm wrong, I'm bad.
Yes.
I mean that's pretty prevalent in
There's a lot of places to get
religion
it.
in general, but
Yeah.
like this
This would just
again was like very particular because it was more than a church. It was presented like this is your family too. So it's almost like your family, your faith,
Yes.
all of that God, it's just all wrapped up in one. And it almost seems like more like it would be more impactful,
Yeah.
these ideas for that reason.
these are people that are supposed to love you and know the secrets of God and all of that stuff all at once. And so
The shame that you would feel when
the
they're
shame
saying
that could
these
come along with
things,
it
yeah.
is it's you kind of guess basic stuff to like deny who you are. And he's he says it's like he almost sounds compassionate in the sense that he's like, it's like any other sin. He compares it to murder at one point, which I'm
Oh
not
my
sure he
God.
included that, just but like he's like we would accept you as a murderer even if you murdered. We
Such
would
a
not want you, but we wouldn't
terrible
reject you, and we'd love you
comparison.
in Christ or whatever. It's the same thing. It's
Oh
like
my God, no.
this is a sin, and so like we'll accept you for who you are, but you have to deny this part of you, kind
Yeah,
of thing.
that's
So
what he says.
let's listen more.
It's actually part of, when we talk about the carnal mind, it's part of the makeup. It's part of the mental makeup that you can't change. They've even proved that in experiments with in homosexuals. If you investigate, if you research homosexual affairs between men, homosexuals have many, like hundreds of affairs in a year. Constantly, they're in it for the sex. If you take lesbians, you find that most lesbians are not in it for the sex. They're still looking for a long-term relationship. And the sexual thing, if you go to like a lesbian bar, you'll find out that the women are there to find companionship, find someone to talk to, whatever. They're looking for it. But if you go to a male gay bar, they are there because they are going to get laid that night. That is why they're there.
Yeah,
I think,
it's-
Gary's experience at gay bars is just a certain experience. When he's there to get laid. I think that's what, like, he's doubling down across the board here and just saying, women only ever want emotional connection and men only ever want to have sex. And you can prove that because gay men are just only ever having
all
sex.
this research that he's done and all this.
Yes.
It's so where is he getting this information from?
I think he's getting it from himself that he is a robot man.
That he talks like he's an expert on it.
Yeah.
And it's misleading.
Yes. I mean, again, this is a man who like was married with a kid and he just was like, break your bonds and like left them
Mm-hmm.
for, this woman here. And like maybe
Marilyn.
Gary's, the whole motivation in life is just sex. And like, that's where he's getting his ideas from or whatever. I don't know. But like, he's just saying that same thing.
He's saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And again, it is reductive. It's like all men want to fuck, all women want to get married.
That's right. And I think it's a little more complicated than that, Gary.
Homosexuality, to me, is a negative thing. And I think it's a negative thing for a lot of reasons. That's why I don't know if I want to get into this because it could take too long.
Spoiler alert, it did take too long.
We had to cut it down.
Yeah, we did cut it down. So we just have a few more clips.
So many bad ideas. We couldn't fit them all in. Gary's bad ideas.
That's
I
right.
think it's really important to recognize that there really can be physical roots to homosexuality, and I think they've proved it enough scientifically now that, especially in male homosexuals, that you can point to an area of the brain that in developed with female characteristics rather than male characteristics. But I think you can look at it as a handicap and a problem that some people will definitely have a difficult time getting over homosexuality because it really does have a physically based root in their lives.
Okay, that physical base root, he said, now, I'm not a neuroscientist, not a doctor of any sort, and, I don't even know, but like the way that he said that, like a man who's gay has a female chunk of his brain.
Well, what I don't like, regardless, is he's just like, get over it. He says, oh, it'd be really hard to get over, as if someone should just get over like who they are.
Yes. And that's what he really is. That's what he's like saying there is it's like, it's a negative thing that you have to just like ignore and deal with. He goes on a little bit more about this.
To me, it's very simple spiritually to discern between when somebody is homosexual or involved in homosexual activities or tendencies because it's something in their spirit or it's something that's rooted in a physical thing. Because if it's in their spirit, boy, it comes through like gangbusters, you know, and you feel it. I mean, you literally feel that thing coming out of that person.
Okay, he's going to talk about physical differences in a second, but like the spiritual discernment.
He's so amazing at discerning in the spirit. Oh, you feel it. I can tell someone's like, you know, it's a spiritual affliction.
I have that connection to the spirit realm, and so I can tell when somebody's gay.
He's so arrogant.
I can just imagine him going to like the Castro Street in San Francisco during Pride and being like, "Do you discern it? Can you feel the homosexuals are near?" You know, like what?
What a dumbass!
What a dumbass!
Let's hear more.
And I think that there's a large spiritual base to that. And of course, there again, the more you get involved in the activity of it, even if it's physically based, if you get involved in the activity of it, you're going to end up with also the perversion spirit that's behind it, and then you're just in more trouble. So I think it's something that, you know, if you have it, you need to get help for it, both spiritually, possibly physically.
Wow. Sounds like a conversion camp and a surgery. Yes. That's like, according to him, it's bonkers.
You got to do something physically for it. So we're going to cut that part of your brain out. I got a doctor back here to handle it.
Dr. Bob.
Back to Gary, you know, talking about, here we go.
Being a man, you know, is horny all the time. A man will screw almost anything that moves, basically, generally. Again, broad sweeping strokes here, folks. So, you know, don't get too upset, but if the shoe fits. The fact that, I mean, I look at myself and say, you know, I have this, and I feel like it is honestly an inherent male quality that has physical, you know, excuses or whatever you want to call it because of my brain.
Okay, so just to clarify, he's saying that like a man wants to screw everything. Mm-hmm. And he has that. So he's saying that I have this thing and it's a physical trait. It's something he can't control.
But because I recognize that, it's still something I go to the Lord with and I go to Marilyn with. And I fight that tendency because I think that it has negative connotations to me personally, to my relationship with Marilyn and the rest of my family and to you guys. And so to me, it is something to be fought, not something to be given into. So I don't want to say, well, my brain tells me to go screw every woman I see, and therefore, since my brain's telling me to do it and it's a physical thing, then that justifies me doing it.
So he's then going to compare that to homosexuality, saying because he has that physical desire, he needs to repress it. And so he thinks that people that are gay should repress that urge.
That's what I don't like about what's happening now is everybody's going, oh, well, it's fine. You know, just if that's what you are, go do it. And I think, God, if I went and did everything that I am, it'd scare me what I would be going and doing.
Okay. What? Mm-hmm. It would scare me if I went and did everything that I am and everything I was like thinking. That wouldn't scare me.
Right. To
do everything that I am. I don't think I have any like real scary urges.
Sounds like Gary does.
Scary Gary here.
Scary Gary.
Okay, here we go.
Lord Jesus, help me, because let me tell you what I am. You know, let me tell you what I'd like to go do, and I don't want to go do it.
It's just weird.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's just strange.
You know,
it seems inappropriate to say those things to teenagers too.
That's right. I don't identify with that, Gary. I'm not worried about that.
To all of a sudden make this like a race of people, you know, and distinguish them from everybody else over here that has to live their life and deal with what they are and work with it. I don't like that aspect of it. I don't think we should start, a separate army and navy for gays and things like that. I don't believe in gay rights.
Okay. I mean, if you thought he was going to say something else, yeah.
It's just so awful.
Yeah. Okay. And just to, I know this is a longer episode, but like that stuff we keep promising, it's right around the corner. If this is your fourth time trying to watch this thing through, welcome back 6 months later. Because I understand it's not fun to make it through. Okay, what's this one say?
I can't read it. It's too.
Oh, okay. These are fun. A couple just to kind of like an example of like what was going on here.
Yeah.
You understand? It's like
gives you the flavor, a little more flavor.
That's right. It's this immature, whatever. What does Marilyn have to say?
Here's the cycle of just growing up. The boys and girls are kind of the same until the girls start developing, and then it's always the makeup, and it's always, they are starting to project, and the boys are
starting to erect.
So that's in case you couldn't hear. Marilyn says the girls are starting to project, and Gary says, and the boys are starting to erect.
Okay, here we go. I don't know what this one is, but it's
The same thing sexually. It's not that great to have us, all inbred here too closely, lest, the next generation be morons.
That's what happened for the majority.
Yeah,
of people.
before we play the rest of it, that's pretty much what happened.
Everyone was highly encouraged to choose a mate from the fellowship. So,
In the fellowship, as Gary said at the very beginning of this, everybody was weird. So, how are you going to get somebody outside? I almost felt like there was, it's like a. And I don't mean, it was a little bit from this, but I wanted to say, in a generation or two, if this thing had kept going, it probably blood tests would have started to
need to be required.
Yeah. Okay. But he says we don't want people to get too inbred here, otherwise we're morons.
Morons. But yeah, more.
Oh, that's
Mormon.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting because obviously one of the shepherds off stage is like, oh, I thought you said Mormons, and not morons, Mormons, and they clip the audio.
And they clip that, and then Gary says, "Yeah, Mormon," and they clip that audio, but they don't clip him saying, "You want to fuck? You want to screw? Vacuum operated dildos?" You'll hear it later.
I don't know why they're not trying to offend the Mormons.
And not trying to some random Mormon is going to get a hold of this restricted videotape and be like, "Oh my god, I'm so offended by Gary Hargrave."
I was going to really like these people until they said that. What?
Stupid.
Stupid. Okay. There's a couple more fun.
In all honesty, if I was you, I would have certain things that I would be looking for. I would not marry a frigid woman. And so I would damn well find out if this woman is going to be so horny you have to beat her off with a club before I married her. I mean, just honestly speaking, that to me, the sex thing is still part of the qualification.
Okay. So I'd like to acknowledge that if he's going to marry a woman, she better be so horny he has to beat her off the club. So now we know what Marilyn's like. Thanks, Gary.
Ew.
I don't think you should get into all kinds of kink, and I don't think you should get into all kinds of, excuse because you're not having sex, you're going to do everything else. Don't get dressed up in costume and hang off the guy's fan or something, and you know what I'm saying? Don't. And seriously, and I don't get. Some vacuum-driven dildo set or something so that
you
can...
Okay, just wanted to play this because I thought you guys would love to hear Gary
say vacuum-driven.
Who had that on the bingo card?
Wow.
Wow. Okay, this is where we're getting to this is the stuff. Okay, we're not trying to build it up or whatever, but I think it's very interesting because the way that Charity and I have when I listen to it, I feel like, oh, this is a secret doctrine. This is a deep level doctrine. This is the stuff that they're just letting people, at the very beginning, he's like, we should have specific conversations. I kind of feel like this is one of those things that as you'll see, Gary and Marilyn are exploring in this on the spiritual level. It feels like to me this is something that it's first off, I think it's grooming. I think this whole thing is a certain level of grooming. But I think this is like the way that they were able to use the church as they did with everything. The church was the excuse. The mission was the excuse. The word of God was the excuse. This is the excuse they used in unknown acts. But the way that they're talking about it is very interesting. So let's take a listen.
Sex is difficult. It's really difficult. I really wish that we had more answers about the mystery of it. But I would just simply tell you there's a tremendous, tremendous mystery that goes along with sex. What it does to you psychically, what it does to you spiritually. See. I mean, I feel like Marilyn and I really have fun with sex. But to tell you the truth, and we have a lot of sex.
Thanks for sharing, Gary.
But to tell you the truth, we use sex. And I think that to me is what's important, is that it's not something that's controlling us. We literally use it for a purpose.
Oof.
And you can do that because there is a tremendous, tremendous energy. There's a tremendous psychic, spiritual, I'm telling you, you can use sex like intercession. In fact, you can do better with sex than you can with intercession if you know what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, again, that's such a problem because you have these very young people hearing that, and then a predatory leader like Rick Holbrook could then go, as we have heard that he's done, and say things like, oh, it'd be like interceding for the Lord. And like, it's a very dangerous territory here.
Yes.
Associating those two things.
I think that's what's like very groomy about it.
Yes, exactly.
Is it's setting it's like better than intercession. And what's important to understand is this is all in the context of life's mission. This is about something higher than anything else that we're doing in our life. This dating crap that he's talking about, the like, how do we relate with people, and like, should you be a virgin or not a virgin, and like all that stuff is like not important compared to bringing the kingdom of God,
which is what we were told we were doing.
That's what we were doing. That's what we were doing. That was the whole point. This is the whole point of this thing is we are bringing the kingdom of God. We are the tip of the spear. We are the ones that will bring this in, the first fruits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Bringing the kingdom on earth.
Exactly. And how do we do that? Do you remember what we looked back at in all of the history episodes about John Robert Stevens and stuff? We constantly mention John's intercessors. Interceding was like the spiritual warfare. That was how we grab hold of the kingdom and pull it down. That's how you get through the veil and all that crap. And Gary says that sex, when used right,
is like the highest form of
intercession. Is the highest form of it. Is better than intercession. It's so setting up for, hi, thank you for being part of the living word. Do you want to be a part of the inner circle? Do you want to be the ones that are really doing it? Because we're really fighting Satan here. We really are doing something important. We're really doing this. And like, if you really want to help, then Marilyn and I have got a job for you, and I don't know, I'm not saying that happened or anything.
But it's a perfect setup.
But it is the perfect setup. Like you said, you've heard that stuff about Rick, where he could use that excuse and just say that like, oh, it's not going to work on the physical level. Well, if you're really dedicated, then I've got something for you.
Yeah.
It's very like, these are the tools. And here they are. We're seeing a little glimpse of it because, again, he's talking to this broad audience. Get him into a specific, hi, Gary, I want to know more. I'm really dedicated. Let's get into that room and hear the real secrets that him and Marilyn are exploring. I think it's dangerous. Okay.
Yeah. It just made me think about how have I ever mentioned on the podcast before about that photograph you're so mad that I threw out?
Oh, yeah, no, I don't know if you have.
When I left the church, there's a time period where I just got rid of everything that reminded me of it, including a ton of photographs. And I had all these photographs. Like one was from my 21st birthday party, and I was working for Rick Holbrook at the time and living at the Blix house. And like Gary and Marilyn came to my birthday party, which like only because I was working for Rick. That's the only time that ever happened. But there's a photograph of like where Gary had shoved my face in my cake, and then Marilyn was licking frosting off my face. And it just, the picture, looking back on it, I was like, oh my God, I never realized like how sexual that was. Like, that's just so inappropriate. And here I am like, 21 years old. And
yeah, exactly.
So it kind of like now in the context of what we know now about everything is like, were they looking for open doors in me to do stuff? I don't know, but I think it's very bizarre that she would lick frosting off my face.
It is very bizarre. Such a weird moment for somebody to come up to you and you were then like, I'm going to lick it right off your face. Yeah, that's really gross. I am upset that you got rid of that photo. But like in all seriousness, like, you got to get rid of it if it's fucking you up. So that's totally fine. But like, yeah, it's like you piece those kind of things together, and I don't know. These guys at the very least are weird. We're not even done by any means, so hold on.
Why? You tell me where you're going to get as intense. You're not going to get that intense coming here and praying and standing around in circles. I'll tell you that right now. Well, maybe you do. I don't know. If you do, meet over here after service. We'll have some prayer.
Innuendo, methinks.
Yeah. Sorry. Your intercession gets more intense than Marilyn sex? And my sex, our intercession sex. Meet us in the back room and we'll have some prayer. Yeah, it really changes a lot. When you know this, it changes. You can go back to all the different things they're saying, like, oh, we're going to have special prayer meetings or private intercession or anything like that. Or like even just the one that I was talking to Charity about, that like we did that split episode about John Robert Stevens, and he went up to a cabin, formed a triad, and they interceded, and they were really doing this. I was like, oh.
And he said something in there. What were his words? I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like, we reached a level of like, of prayer that like I've never reached, but when it was like, okay.
It's like, okay, how did you do that again? Did you
use and two women in a cabin in the woods?
Yes, exactly.
Interceding.
Yeah, it takes a whole new meaning when you hear Gary's insight into this. Yeah.
But I tell you, you have in sex the ability to turn something loose that is mystical, psychic, and spiritual on every level. And it's an awesome thing if you use it and you know how to use it and you know what to do with it. And the problem with doing it, here's why I would tell you to abstain from sex until marriage. Because the problem of having sex outside of marriage is that you screw up those pathways. You're cluttering up. You make bonds when you have sex. If you have sex with 50 people, you're going to have 50 bonds that are going to be very, very difficult. And even the men, I don't care how macho you are, well, you can love them and leave them. No, you can't. You don't love them and leave them. You love them and they have their claws in your back the rest of your life.
Woof.
Unless there's really something done spiritually to break that. And there's things that even worse than the spiritual bonds, I think, are the emotional psychic bonds.
Okay. He's going to get into more of the bond stuff and the claws in your back and all of that stuff. And again, it's like all of this is coming from that place of like the depth and the spiritual expansion of the intercession and whatever. But like, want to throw back to like, remember we played that one clip where he said like, you do sex right, it can be amazing. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about the intercession. You do it wrong, it can be deadly.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you're thinking about it on this level, it's like, so even just outside of the like weird, like, oh, we're going to go back in the back room and intercede and whatever. It's just putting this like intensity on something that's supposed to be fun It's supposed to be something you do with a partner that you care about, you know? And that pressure of so much of it's like, if you have sex with somebody, they're going to be their claws are in your back the rest of your life.
Oh yeah,
it might not true at all. That's up to you.
I know. I've thought about that a lot over the years. Like, do I feel, all that fear he put in was like, oh my God, if I have sex with somebody that I'm not married to, then I'm bonded to that person and then to everyone that they've had sex with, because that's what they would say. You're not only bonded to that person, but everyone they've had sex with. And you've all these bonds, and then you're all cluttered and like, just, it was very confusing, but just totally fear-based.
Yeah. It's just it's scaring people, I think, and it's screwy. So let's keep seeing what he has to say about bonds.
That link you to a person and to their, especially right now in what we're going through, you link to somebody's carnal mind with all of their limitations, with their thought patterns.
By having sex?
You start thinking thoughts and having things come through to you that never did before you had sex, because you're now thinking someone else's thoughts. It's part of the vehicle of making two people one thing.
So if you have sex with somebody, you can read their mind.
You're thinking their thoughts.
Yeah.
Where did he get this shit?
I don't know. I don't think he understands. I think maybe his brain is down somewhere else. It's not like, and so he gets confused about what's happening.
And I don't care what anybody says about free sex, because like I say, I'm not even approaching this from a moralistic viewpoint. You take the morals and shove them. We're just talking about the honest reality, mentally, psychically, spiritually, as a person, as a human, of what happens to you, that happens when you have sex. And all of these things happen, and you find before long you're carrying people with you that you simply cannot get rid of.
Maybe that's guilt for abandoning your family, Gary. That's what you're carrying with you, is like you got a divorce and like abandon your family, and like you're like, oh, I can't shake it. She's still got claws on my back, because like you never acknowledged them or like came back and said you're sorry or anything. I don't know.
He's projecting.
That's just yeah, exactly.
You look, it's one of the reasons why people getting married a second time, you have such a difficulty with that. Why? Because they're still carrying this other person. Unless that has really, really been broken through their own repentance and through a lot of spiritual help to break what's been created in the act of sex.
And that's something you pointed out the other day when we were going through these, is it's like, you don't think it could be because they had a life together? It's not about the sex. It's because they had spent, all these years together. That's hard to get over. That's hard to work through. It's not about the sex.
That's right. Yeah, this dude.
We talked earlier about the fact that this thing of relating and opening it up creates the same thing. The same thing happens in that. But who in the world does that? See, that's not where people are bonded together.
That's so
this
fucking
is what I'm saying,
stupid.
This fucking like robot man. Like, people don't connect to each other emotionally unless they have sex. Like, that's not
where the bonds are created, through your heart.
Yeah, it's just through your penis.
Ridiculous.
Like, that's the only way.
This is where it's happening. And I'm just telling you, again, to me, this is important for you to know, because it's like learning about AIDS. I'm not, you can go fuck anybody you want to after this meeting tonight. And
okay, we're out.
And he's like, because I'm going to.
Because I'm going to. Remember, intercession afterwards.
We'll still love you, and you'll be part of the body, and we'll bless you and help you and whatever. But I'm telling you, as sure as I'm sitting here, this is what's going to happen. And you are going to live with the consequences, not me. I'm not going to live with it. Everybody else isn't going to. You're going to live with it. And it's just a reality of what you face and what happens by virtue of having sex. It's the spiritual, physical realities. All of that you need to learn, so that if you're going to do it, for God's sake, do it born out of a decision to do it. And know what that decision means. So when you go buy that car, you decided to buy that car because you sat in every other car in that price range, and this is what you want.
I'm sorry, guys. We tried to cut out all the car metaphors. There were actually a lot of them about buying this car.
You're giving away something that is too precious to the rest of your life to, to make that a quick decision. So, Anyway, I don't know if you have questions about that. I'm more than willing to dive into this subject.
Okay, here, let's see.
Because, I'm the subject matter expert and
Yeah.
very well read in all things psychic, spiritual, and sexual.
That's right.
Telling you, nobody understands why God created the desire for sex except the jokes they make in reproduction. Gary and I have pursued the mystery of it because the one thing that really pissed me off all my life was that I couldn't ask anybody about it, not because I was embarrassed. I mean, people do not know what we're talking about, the questions that I've had, and why it's such a mystery, and why it's such a drive, and why it's two worlds. There's the world that you live in, and then there's the world of sex. And those are the only two worlds there are on Earth. Because if you live in the good world, you never bring this up. And then maybe it's easier today than it was in years past, and they're breaking into it a little bit more. But then you can go over here in the world where people are really free to talk about this, and they're abnormal. I mean, they're obsessed by that, so they can't live in this world either. You've either got you've got the, every...
Part of it is they honestly don't know what the hell they're talking about. So
nobody
they're
knows.
Oh,
They know what they're
mystery,
talking
I'm
about, but
telling
I
you.
do. There's only two worlds. Did you know that?
Yeah, there's only two worlds. There's a world of sex. But you hear that she said at the beginning of that clip was that Gary and I have pursued the mystery of this. And that to me, it's just, I think that's more of just that intercession stuff.
Yeah,
that they pursued the mystery of this intercession. Like we are no one knows the stuff that we're looking into.
Mm-hmm.
I just, they're idiots, but also idiots that are doing something weird.
Right. It's just way too much information that they're giving about their own sex lives.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's got to be real fun for these kids. Okay, so that stuff. Mm-hmm. Here's our thank you for bearing with us through this pretty long and terrible episode.
Highly disturbing.
Highly disturbing. We have one last thing that we're going to play with. Now, and we'll kind of try and make this quick-ish, but this tape was brought up in Gary's deposition. And I think officially, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm basically just reading these documents and piecing together the story a little bit. Gary's lawyers seem to think that it wasn't fair that the plaintiff's lawyers bring up this tape. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to read that excerpt from the deposition. It was not a part of it was a part of that one deposition, but they pulled it out of the document that we
because Gary's attorneys objected to it being included. If this were to go to trial, they said it would be prejudicial.
Yes, that's right. So yeah, that's basically what it is. So then but in that process, they have to file this chunk of the deposition separately.
To say this is what we don't want.
This is what we don't want. Exactly. So that means we get access to it. Mm-hmm. So what we're going to do is read that same format as we did before in the past episode about Gary's deposition. Charity will play that of the plaintiff's lawyers, and I will do Gary.
Do you remember during that talk having a discussion about when people become intrigued with sex?
Again, this was when he says that talk, he means
Gary Maryland talked to the singles. Yeah.
So do you remember during talk having discussion of when people become intrigued with sex? He says, I do not.
Do you remember saying there's a tremendous mystery that comes with sex? Marilyn and I really have fun with sex. We have a lot of sex. We use sex. That to me is what's important. We literally use it for a purpose. Do you remember saying that?
I do not. And we all just played for you that scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you dispute that you said that in a talk, or is it you just don't remember?
I do not remember.
Based on what your sort of philosophy and teachings were at that time, is that something that sounds in character for you to share with singles in talking about sex?
Not necessarily, no.
He quotes here, there's a tremendous energy, physical, spiritual, and you go on to say, you can do better with sex as an intercession than you can standing around praying.
I don't remember making that statement.
Is that statement consistent with what you believed at the time?
I don't remember.
And you followed up with saying, you tell me where you're going to get more intense. Do you recall saying that?
No.
During that talk, do you remember Marilyn saying nobody helps these kids understand this mystery of sex and hormones that start at as early as 9 or 10?
I don't.
Do you recall saying after she said that or 5?
No.
At the time, did you believe that children become intrigued with sex as early as age 5?
I don't recall.
Do you believe that now?
I think so.
And so is it out of character for you to have said that in a talk with singles about sex, that children as young as 5 become intrigued with it?
I don't know if I would have or not.
As you sit here today, are you disputing that you and Marilyn said in a talk with singles about sex that children, prepubescent children, 9 or 10 is what Marilyn said, and as early as 5 is what you said? Do you dispute that you said that?
I don't recall saying it.
I understand you don't remember saying it.
Right.
Are you saying that it's something you never would have said, or you really just don't remember?
I really don't remember.
And do you remember following up that statement with saying, I'm not weird, you tell me, watch your kids at 5 and tell me they're not intrigued with sex?
I don't remember saying that.
Now, you've never raised a child at the age of 5, correct?
I think this is the part that we want to point out that I think is like one of the most interesting. So just to summarize this really quick, you're going to watch this tape in a second. Marilyn says something, and then Gary basically says like, "Oh, 5-year-olds are obsessed with sex.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not weird for thinking that. Look at 5-year-olds.
Yeah.
Can't you tell that they're obsessed with sex?"
Mm-hmm.
And so this question I think is really interesting.
Yeah, because the lawyer says you never raised a child at the age of 5, correct?
That's correct.
So it's saying you tell me watch your kids at 5 and tell me they're not intrigued with sex. Whose children were you referring to?
Ooh, I just think that's such a good question. Remember, like we've said before, he abandoned his kid
When she was 2.
When she was 2, or like 1.5 or 2 or something like that. And so he hasn't raised, as they asked him, have you ever raised a child to 5? He said no. And so whose kids are you looking at
really
that you
weird.
are looking at them and saying, oh, they're obsessed with sex? Good question. Okay, so this is when the lawyers start. So it gets a little chaotic here because his lawyer jumps in and says, if any. And then Gary says, no one specific that I would assume at this point.
Have you ever seen a child as young as 5 and thought that child is intrigued with sex?
We got another objection from one of the lawyers. And then somebody says you can answer. And so Gary says, okay, I would say right now, look at the news. Children having sex change operations. There's all kinds of things going on with gender choosing. So I would say, I think at that age, there was some consciousness and there's an awareness and there's an interest in sex.
But you weren't talking about biological sex, like whether somebody is male or female. You were talking about a talk with singles about sex, like engaging in sexual intercourse, correct?
Objection, lacks foundation, vague, ambiguous, overbroad, and not necessarily, says Gary.
Okay.
You can have an interest in sex. You can be horny without doing anything about it.
Can a 5-year-old be horny?
I'm not a doctor. I don't know.
But have you ever seen a 5-year-old and thought that 5-year-old is horny?
Objection, argumentative, and then an unidentified attorney is what it says. It's also harassing. Another, I agree. And then unidentified, badgering the witness, and then the lawyer.
And then the lawyer says, well, do you want to hear it? I can play it.
They said the whole thing. The lawyer says the whole thing, Gary's lawyer. And then Gary's lawyer also, I think if you're going to play it, you're going to play the whole thing. And you're not going to have time because right now you're sitting here talking, taking things out of context when he tells you he doesn't remember. And then there's a little confusion with the reporter, and which we'll skip. And he says, okay, he's taking things out of context. The witness doesn't recall things, and he's mischaracterizing the whole point of the video. I agree. I'd like, this is another lawyer. I agree. I like it. I'll note for the record that the video is almost 2.5 hours long, and taking tiny snippets out of it and grilling the witness about is unfair and harassing. His lawyer again, I think it's harassing. I think it needs to stop, and I think it needs to stop now unless you want to play the whole video, which means you're going to have to get a court order because I don't think you have the time. And then the plaintiff's lawyer says,
I'm not playing the whole video.
Okay, so stop asking questions out of context around this. And then the hold on. And
the court reporter's like, you're all talking at the same time.
They're all talking too much. And then, okay, so back to the plaintiff's lawyer asked this last question.
Do you care to put that in greater context than you already have?
And Gary says, no. Okay, so obviously they get all up in there. They're like,
the lawyers are like trying really hard to make sure this is not included. And why do you suppose that is?
Yes, exactly. Because it's saying, that question where he's like, you can have an interest in sex. You can be horny without doing anything about it. And the plaintiff's lawyer is like, can a 5-year-old be horny? And it's just, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. And it's just this which I understand, legally, maybe this is all makes sense and whatever, who cares? What's interesting is it just hinges that the most interesting question to me is you never raised a kid. Mm-hmm. So whose kids are you talking about?
And I think why he was going so hard, this is just my opinion, why the plaintiff's attorney was going so hard after this is because it's reflective of the fact that there was a culture in the Living Word Fellowship that was predatory of children, sexually predatory.
Yes.
And so him saying in this talk, 5-year-olds get horny. I mean, that is just, again, setting up a picture of what this atmosphere was like.
Right. Exactly.
The Living Word.
And I think now, obviously, what we've been playing for you are snippets, right? Which is they said, don't do snippets or whatever and that thing. And it is very long.
They said 2.5 hours, but it was 4 hours.
It's closer to 4 hours, 3:45, something like that. So it's a very long thing. But I think we've done a good job in this episode of giving you the context. This is the greater context of this talk. It is very clearly about sex, having sex. And so when Marilyn's talking here, she's talking about, and you'll see this clip, we'll play it. She's saying, kids, they get that sexual awakening at 9 or 10. And Gary interjects, and she didn't say sexual awakening, but she's saying that. You'll see in a second. Gary interjects, and he says his stuff. Let's just play it for you. That's the whole point of this, right?
I think part of it is they honestly don't know what the hell they're talking about. So nobody knows. That's the mystery. I'm telling you, nobody understands why God created the desire for sex except the jokes they make in reproduction. And then they joke about it. But nobody understands, and nobody helps these kids pass through this hormonal stage that starts maybe as early as 9 or 10. Or 5. And no, but there's no question. I know I'm not weird.
I think he's proven this whole time that he is weird.
You pretend... You watch your kids at 5 and tell me they're not intrigued with sex.
Okay. Just the point of playing that is a little bit of that content. We put context in the whole thing. Marilyn says at the very beginning there, no one understands why God created the desire for sex, and kids need help through this hormonal phase that she says starts around 9 or 10. And then Gary jumps in and says that hormonal stage and that desire for sex starts at 5. I'm not weird. Look at your kids when they're 5 years old.
You tell me they're not intrigued by sex.
And they're not obsessed with sex. Yeah.
And it's in this jokey way. And to me, that's just really scary. It's talking about children in a sexual way and then laughing about it.
That's right.
I don't like it.
and I know that an argument can be made that kids are curious about their body when they're young. I don't think that's the same thing as being obsessed with sex. Mm-hmm. I am not a doctor or a kid specialist or any of that stuff.
Well, Gary, doesn't he go on to say more about that?
So yes, what we are adding on top of this that we didn't find anywhere else in the deposition, them talking about is a little bit more on Gary expanding on he actually drops it down. So 5 years old is what he said there. You'll see the ages he thinks is appropriate now.
I feel like there is a tremendous amount of sexuality in young children. We were talking about 5 earlier. I think you can go back even earlier to that. And if you're watching and you're listening, you will find that the sexuality is there.
What is the point of him saying that?
Yeah.
What is the point? How is that educating any of these teenagers and adults about sex?
It's these weird, again, this whole tape feels like a grooming thing. Mm-hmm. These weird ideas kind of poke through in it that they have. their beliefs of like 5-year-olds and stuff. And like you're saying, we've even heard plenty of stories, like too many leaders. We've shared a number on the YouTube channel and just on the podcast of people who were abused at a young age by various leaders. And I think that's the context all the way through this whole thing, is that you have that context of like, okay, wait, so like almost every single church in the fellowship over the course of all of these years, serial abusers were put in charge and protected over and over again. Marilyn's own son, for example, and reading the lawsuits that those depositions were taken for detail not old kids, very young, like kids getting abused and things like that by her son. And they like, you know, he's out, he's in, he's out, he's in, he's out, he's in, leaders all across the thing. I think it just shows that these guys have got some bad ideas and they're letting bad things happen.
Yeah, they created that culture. And like this is sort of proof of that. All their weird ideas about sex, and they make it sound like a sex cult again. Which it kind of could be. I know that's the scary thing. It had undertones of that, if not overt tones of that.
Yeah, I think that's what's scary about this whole thing, is it gives you a window into their mind about sex, and they're the leaders of this thing. And especially when they tie sex to the mission of the church, that to me is when things get weird. And just acknowledging that 5-year-olds are obsessed with sex too. So like, you know, I don't know.
It's hard to talk about this. I mean, I think this episode is certainly not tight, and there's a reason for that. And like, sorry, but not sorry. This is hard stuff to wade through, and it's so convoluted too. It's like hard to make sense of any of it. And I think we're trying to make sense of it, but it's like you can't. Yeah,
and I don't want to speculate and go into places that are like, well, see, because he said that, like that means he must have done something. I don't think that that's enough to go off of. But I do think that, like, you know, if this just stood on its own and there was no rampant sexual abuse in the Living Word,
you'd be surprised.
It'd be whatever. It'd be like okay, he's got weird, dumb ideas, but like when you connect it, to all of that stuff. So we wanted to share it, as messy as it is, with everybody, because this is one of those things they didn't want people to see. You notice the shepherd warning, restricted tape at the beginning, and then how it wasn't going to be presented if there was a situation with an actual court date and a jury and stuff. They didn't want Gary to be questioned on this stuff. I think it's just important then to put it out there because of how much Gary doesn't want it to be.
Yeah.
That's all.
I'd be curious to know what people, you know, like listeners who weren't a part of this church, how they would hear that, all those things that were said, and how shocking it might be. Or even for some former members who may have never heard it, or, I mean, like you said, some of that doctrine was still embedded in you, but to hear it was like next level. Yeah, that's what I want to hear that too. Send us emails, or just like, you know, as usual, like drop it all in the comments. You know, obviously if it's sensitive, but you still want to share it, feel free to send us an email about what you recognized from this. If you are a former member and have memories and or realize like, like kind of like how we did, you know, and remember, even if you're watching this 6 months later because you keep trying and you fail to do it, please do that anyways. With us. Yeah, it's a messy thing. Like we said, we tried to record it over a year ago. I've even gone through it a number of times, and it took me a really long time. It took me multiple sessions on my own when I first did it. It took Charity and I multiple sessions to get through it. And like, it actually took me a while to hear these things and even be like, oh, wait a minute, that's weird, you know? So, well, we're exhausted. Yeah, I want to be done.
All right, see you later.
Thanks for listening to Oops, I'm in a Cult.
Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
Follow us on Instagram at Oops, I'm in a Cult Podcast.
Support us on Supercast by visiting our website at oopsiminacult.com to subscribe and receive exclusive bonus content.
Or email us at oopsiminacult@gmail.com.
Take it easy and don't join a cult. If you or someone you know has a mental illness, is struggling emotionally, or has concerns about their mental health, there are ways to get help. Use the resources linked in the description to find help for you, a friend, or a family member.